Hollie's Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero at the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live. It has been a very long time since we've done a show on a Monday. But I'm very excited to get into stuff because we've got a lot to talk about tonight with Tottenham concerned. As you can see, Ben is with me tonight. So Ben, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It feels like it's been a while since we've done this. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it.
No, it definitely will be good. Unfortunately, Billie T can't join us tonight with the sad news that Emerson is potentially exiting Tottenham Hotspur. So I wish him well on his recovery and hope to see him very, very soon. But we have got so much to kind of delve into because I've been very, very not lazy, but just been out of the loop for a long little time. So we've got a lot to go over. So Ben, I hope you're ready for me to pick your brains.
Don't worry, yeah, I'm ready. I've been locked into all of it, so I'm ready to go.
That is what we like to hear. So we're going to start obviously with some of the preseason games. Obviously we beat Hearts, we beat QPR, and there's a good chance and a good time to see some of the youngsters play. I mean, there's quite a few we need to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about Will Lancashire because the goal that he scored, I think lots of people have made the same kind of comparison. It was very much Harry Kane-esque, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's not just in the finish as well, but just his movement. I've been really impressed with Will Lancashire. I think a lot of people are making the Kane comparison as well because of the kind of the storyline and the narrative of him being at Arsenal and obviously leaving Arsenal, being let go by them and then going to Sheffield United, then coming to Tottenham. And obviously boyhood Tottenham fan as well. So I think a lot of people are kind of drawing those parallels. And I think there's a lot of Kane's game in him, really. And I think you saw that in that Hearts game, that finish, but also his movement as well. I think we've seen that a lot in the under-21s last year. It's funny with Will Lancashire because I've said this multiple times now. I kind of feel like he's getting a lot of recognition now, don't get me wrong, because he's been playing in every preseason game and I think he's looked a threat in every game, even if he hasn't scored, especially against Vissel on Saturday. I thought he was really good when he came on. I think that he almost somewhat gets overlooked, which is quite strange considering that he was the PL2 Player of the Year last year and I think it was maybe 23 goals. I think he scored a lot of goals in that title-winning team for Tottenham. So I've been really, really impressed with him. Again, like you said, that Hearts goal, just the way that he kind of arcs that run and then the slip into the corner and then the celebration with Mikey Moore in front of those Spurs fans as well. I said it, like it could be one of those, again, it's a pre-season friendly, who knows, but that image of Mikey Moore and Will Lancashire in front of the Spurs fans there behind that goal could be something that we almost look back at in like 5 years' time and think, wow, that was like, who would have thought? Well, I know we're all hyped about them, but kind of feels a bit like a moment potentially. But I'm really excited. I've been really impressed with Will, 100%.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that other man's name as well, of Mikey Moore, because he's been another one. He's been another one that's, like we say, we all want them to go on and excel themselves, but they are truly showing the signs that they could potentially be the next two golden stars at Tottenham. Yeah,
Mikey Moore's been so good. And I think, again, like Ange has sort of come out and it's funny with Postecoglou because sometimes he's quite hard to read in terms of how he doesn't want to give players too much praise. He doesn't want to kind of, he's quite guarded, especially in terms of maybe young players, quite protective. But the way he talks about Mikey Moore, I do think there is a little bit, it's interesting because with him, obviously he was in every Premier League matchday squad from the North London derby onwards, I think, towards the end of the season. And obviously he had an amazing season for the under-18s. And naturally, when you're on the bench and coming on against the likes of Man City, people start to stand up and take a bit of notice. Obviously, there has been rumours about, with his contract situation, obviously, he has basically agreed to sign a professional contract with Tottenham, which turns professional when he turns 17. But because he's 16 and technically still a child, the way that those kind of laws work, someone could come in and potentially poach him away from Tottenham. And I do think there is an element of them fast tracking him because they're scared of losing him a little bit. Again, with Mikey, like boyhood Tottenham fan, they want to prove to him that this is the best place for him to be. I definitely think it is. I definitely think it's the right manager for him to work under as well, 100%, with how brave he is in terms of chucking young players in and giving them chances. Again, he's scored or assisted in every single game so far. And again, people will say that it's only pre-season. And look, everything that me and you say tonight is going to be caveated with the fact that it's only pre-season. We get it. The level of opposition haven't been strongest. But against Vissel Kobe on Saturday, that was a team that are still in the middle of their season. So they're fresh, they're sharp, and have got good players. QPR are a much better side than they were at the start of last season with Cifuentes coming in. They've got a good manager. That was a good test for Tottenham and Hearts as well. Again, a top Scottish League side. So But if you're 16 doing that against grown men, that's when that conversation becomes a little bit more redundant, I think. But what I love about him and what I love about the other younger players as well, because I think Jamie Donnelly's been super impressive, Alfie Devine as well, and obviously we talked about Will Lancashire. It's just the confidence. They're not phased, and I think it's so much easier for these players now to step up into the first team because there is there's more of a holistic approach to the way that every team at every level at Spurs, like the whole club, goes about playing their football. Everyone's kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, so there's less pressure for these players to step up and perform. And also, when you're playing attacking football, playing on the front foot, automatically these younger players are more likely to thrive, and especially with a manager that kind of gives them that freedom to do that. So yeah, but Mikey's been 16 years old. He's just been absolutely incredible. So good.
I think that's the thing. It's just nuts to sit here and say he's 16. Like when we talk about obviously Will and this, obviously they're still very, very good and they're still very young. But with Mike, it's like he's 16 and he's balling. And like we say, we'll always say, oh, it's only pre-season. But like you said, he's managed to turn up in every game, show what he's worth. And I think just the movement for that goal that he scored against Vissel Kobe, again, kind of proving that Andrew's trying to do the system where we get to the byline and then cut it back. It was kind of true evident in that game, wasn't it?
100%. And also like Will Lancashire's movement for that goal as well. I don't necessarily think it's like particularly intentional to like make the space for Mikey Moore, but he's anticipating that cutback. Spurs, when they kind of get in those positions, there's so many options in terms of like, do we cut back or do we go to the byline and fizz it low across the box? Is someone going to get in there at the back post? Like how many times have we seen that with Werner and Johnson, like those low drill crosses to the back post and the other one, whoever crosses it, the other one is on the end of it. Kind of thing. I think Johnson will get a lot of goals like that, and again, it's kind of been replicated with the youngsters as well. And again, like with Will Lancashire, he peels back because he wants that cutback. Then that does create that space for Mikey Moore, who gets in there, just anticipates it. I mean, he could have had 3 goals on Saturday, Mikey Moore. He had one cleared off the line, which was potentially a handball. He had a diving header that he put over the bar from a very similar chance as well. Like again, it was Donnelly who set him up. Jamie Donnelly's been another one who's been so impressive. Again, it was Donnelly with the cutback for the goal, but it was Donnelly for the chipped little ball for the chance that Mikey Moore kind of dived like a salmon and headed it over. It was quite amusing that he almost missed it in a way. It was quite funny, but he got his goal in the end and it always felt like it was coming. I think what's been great about him is that there's been this sense of inevitability every time he steps on the pitch as well. It doesn't feel like sometimes players, more experienced players might hide away or might not pass the ball to some of the younger players as much. And sometimes those younger players might hide away, even in a pre-season game, but they just give the ball to him and feel like something's going to happen, which is so encouraging. And again, like with Mikey, like he mainly does play as a winger or like more in that number 10 position, but he often plays on the left-hand side most of the time. So again, it's not a massive adjustment going from the left wing to the right wing. But again, he's playing in a position that he hasn't played too much. So it's like, and the fact that he's thriving and has got a goal contribution in every game, and also like that, none of us have seen it, but that game against Cambridge behind closed doors, I think he scored, was it a brace or a goal in that as well? I know Johnson scored a hat-trick, and I think Mikey Moore got a goal in that as well. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what you can do. And also, we're playing against the K-League All-Stars on Wednesday, which will be, again, another good run out for the players. But then it's 2 games against Bayern Munich. And then it's like, okay, well, why not go and show what you can do against Bayern? So I'm really excited to see what he can do in those games, but he's been so impressive, so impressive.
I think it goes back to like what you said. Everybody's kind of under the same philosophy in football at the club at the moment. They're all playing the same sort of football. Whereas years before, we've had Conte at the helm or we've had Jose at the helm, and that wasn't kind of the same philosophy throughout the whole club. And I think that's like what you said earlier. It just makes it easier for these younger players to just step into that first team role and have so much confidence, just go and do what they want to do. And I know that you obviously mentioned about players maybe playing in certain different positions. I think one player that's come into the side, very, very new to the side, is Archie Gray. The fact that he's played all over the gaff, and I don't think he's actually played in his natural suited position. What have you kind of made of him since he's come to the club?
Again, super impressive. I think the most impressive thing has been his attitude. Like when you hear him speak, I was watching Alistair Gold did a video earlier and he was talking about his experience because he's out there on the tour, and he interviewed Archie Gray and he said he was the nicest 18-year-old kid I've ever spoken to. He said he's like so mature, so confident in himself. And again, he comes from quite a footballing family with like a quite rich heritage. So you could imagine maybe he'd be a little bit guarded when it comes to doing media stuff and things like that. But I think the way that he kind of handles himself off the pitch, and again, that was reflective in the fact that there was something that I think, again, Alistair Gold might have written this. last week, saying about he was even going around picking up the cones in training and stuff like that. And it was like, no, we don't do that here. Like, we've signed you for £40 million. Like, you don't need to do that. But I said it on Twitter the other day. My bold prediction is that I think he could be a future Spurs captain. I genuinely think that with his attitude. But again, like on the pitch, that has been reflective of that, and that's why I think it's important to mention it. He's got involved, knuckled down in a position that he's never played before. Like, bear in mind, he played pretty much all over the place for Leeds last season. I think he played 30 games at right back, and then basically the rest of the games in midfield. So again, he's not shy, and he's not what's the word? He's not new to him playing in different positions, but playing at centre back, I would. He's been so impressive. I think what he's done is he's fulfilled the Romero role in that centre-back partnership really nicely, because he's the one that kind of strides out from the back and makes those line-breaking passes. We saw that a lot against Vissel on Saturday. He actually looked a little bit more uncomfortable when he stepped into midfield, but again, people talk about it. Obviously, that was their first game in Japan, but the heat and all those kind of things, like it plays a factor. Like, he got caught for the goal, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. That can happen, especially when you kind of play as gung-ho as we do sometimes, a poor touch, and you can leave yourself exposed. So I'm not too worried about it. But he's been so impressive playing out of position. And again, like I said, I think it's just his attitude and the fact that he's got, like, I think I have had like a few comments on some of my videos where I've spoken about him almost getting a little bit irritated that we're not seeing him in the position that we bought him for. But for me, if Postecoglou, again, it's putting a bandage over something because we haven't got any centre-backs. Obviously, Dragusin is back now. He's going to play in the Korea leg of the tour, which is good. And actually, I wouldn't even mind seeing Archie Gray continue at centre-back in those games if he's got a proper centre-back alongside him as well in Dragusin, because I think it's just about getting minutes in the legs. And the fact that Postecoglou has played him there from the first pre-season game shows that he clearly trusts that he's good enough to be on the pitch in some way, shape or form. So I'm not too worried about that, but he's so comfortable on the ball. There was a lovely bit of skill that he did in the Vissel Kobe game where he wins the ball back about 25, 30 yards from their goal and just kind of plays it in between his feet and gets away from the player. The pass doesn't then quite come off, but then he goes and wins it back. He's just like, you can see quite often, you can tell how good a player he is, even if you've never watched him, because there would have been a lot of Spurs fans that have probably never seen anything about Archie Gray, probably would have heard of him, but not really watched him. You can tell so much about a player by the way that the fans that have let him go talk about him. Leeds fans, they're not just talking about a prospect from the academy that's been sold. This is like, they're like, you've got a superstar on your hands. And again, pre-season, but I do think there is that level there, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him start a hell of a lot of games for Spurs next season across all the competitions.
Definitely, and I think that's the thing we kind of all have to remember. I mean, it's a great headache to have, obviously, if Andrew's sat there thinking, do I play him in centre-back? If I do that, who am I dropping? Like, for you, if from what you've seen from Archie Gray, and obviously Andrew's probably seen a lot more sort of thing, but where would you see him kind of positioned in the team? Would it be in centre-back to give the likes of Romero, Mickey van der Ven a break if we played a different kind of opposition? How do you kind of see that kind of working? Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised to see him play at centre-back in the European games or some of the European games and maybe some of the cup games as well as a solution. Again, it'll be interesting to see what Tottenham do when it comes to buying a new defender, because there has been links to potentially, obviously we've let a few fullbacks go. Emerson's going by the looks of it. Reguilon is obviously on the chopping block as well. So the rumours were that Spurs, if they were going to sign a defender, it would be a more versatile defender that can play maybe at fullback and centre-back to play with Dragusin. But then if you've got Gray there as well, who's shown that he can do it, and again, like I said, if in these next few games against Bayern and the K-League All-Stars, I wouldn't mind seeing Gray at centre-back if it's alongside Dragusin, because it is something that we could see next year. But I do think, and especially, again, a lot of people are talking about the fact that will he be the backup to Porro, but Jed Spence's emergence again on this kind of redemption arc on this pre-season tour has given us another option there. The noise, I remember when we signed him, there was a piece in The Athletic about it, and the noise then from, I think it was David Ornstein, was that Spurs see him as a midfielder. Like they've bought him as a midfielder, and I think he'll get opportunities next to Basuma, playing in more of that Sarr role. I think there'll be a lot of rotation in that role with obviously Bergvall and Pat Matar. That's kind of Sarr's shirt at the moment. Again, Rodrigo Bentancur is someone that obviously we haven't seen on the tour because of his involvement at Copa America. So that we've got a lot of options. But I think long term, I definitely think it's midfield. But I wouldn't be surprised if next season, just to get him used to playing in the system more so over the course of a year, because they obviously really rate him, I wouldn't be surprised to just see him play everywhere. I think he could probably pop up at left back. He could pop up in that number 6 position as well to bring Basuma off and bring him on off the bench in some games. Rotate with Sarr and then play at right back as well. I think he'll play all over the place.
It's interesting you mentioned obviously that midfield, because I remember obviously last year it was kind of like, I don't know what our best kind of midfield is, and now that obviously we've got these players coming into the forefront of it as well, you're kind of thinking, Jesus, Andrew's going to have a proper header. I think us as fans as well are definitely going to know our kind of best midfield. But for you, Ben, is that kind of like, I don't really care, because it means it gives us a lot of option to kind of play around, especially with the cup games coming in, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think we should focus on getting rid of some of those midfielders that we know aren't going to play any minutes, and we've obviously done that with Højbjerg, someone that needed to be moved on. Lo Celso looks like it's going out the door as well, and then those options are a lot more clearer. And then there is so much room for kind of like, there's obviously with Kulusevski as well, kind of playing in more of a central position throughout pre-season, and obviously towards the end of last season, we've got so many exciting options and so many different ways of doing things. And again, I think people need to see it almost like you've got all of these options, and you've got your kind of starters and your finishers, like a bit like England in the Euros, for example, right? We had so many options off the bench, and these players will play a role throughout the season and throughout the tournament like they did for England. And I think there'll be different variations of that midfield three, not just from game to game, whether it's Premier League on the Saturday and then Europa League on the Thursday, but I also think in game, like how many times do we see last season Kulusevski would start on the right-hand side and we played that 3 in midfield, and then Johnson would come on at half-time, and then Kulusevski would drop into one of those number 10 positions or the kind of advanced 8 position. So I think there'll be so much rotation because of, again, like, this is why I feel quite confident about Tottenham next season and our ability to potentially get top 4, is because I think we've got a really young, talented group of players that we will use a lot. And we will rotate a lot in the cup competitions and in Europe, because it's not just a case of like, okay, we're saving these players for the first team, but we believe that these young players are good enough to help us advance in these competitions as well. It's not just a case of resting the first team. I don't think there is really a first team at Tottenham next season. I think there's 4, 5, 6 key core players that you know are going to start every week, like Romero, Van de Ven, Vicario, Udogie, and probably Porro. It's probably that back line and Sonny, and then maybe Maddison. And other than that, I think it's a bit of a free-for-all, which is quite exciting. Further up the pitch. So I think we'll see a lot of different variations, especially in that midfield. And now we've started to trim things down a little bit in terms of getting players like Højbjerg out the door and Lo Celso looking like he's going as well. I think it makes it more exciting, especially if we add one more to that potentially as well, and maybe a Ramsey or someone. I think there are some really good options in midfield for Spurs.
And I think that's the most exciting thing. Like, obviously, there always is fans that are moaning that players aren't coming through the door with these big names. But we've also seen with the likes of Archie Gray, okay, yes, pre-season, but he's showing what he can do, what he's worth. With the young players coming through from the youth side, it's kind of reinforcing the fact that we might not have it locked down right now, but this is a project. It's not like with the previous managers where it was kind of like, let's try and get instant gratification sort of thing. It's more now, let's work towards that process. So I think we've seen that with obviously Lucas Bergvall come in. Obviously, the name that I told you before, I was going to butcher, with him coming into the side as well. We're going to see a bit of him, because I think we're playing against him on Wednesday, aren't we?
Yeah, so Yang Min-hyuk is in the squad for the K-League All-Stars on Wednesday, which is going to be fascinating, because it could, potentially be Emerson's last game for Spurs, and it might have Yang on that left wing giving him nightmares, hopefully, as long as it's not against Pedro Porro. If it's against Emerson, I don't really mind too much. But yeah, I think you're right. I think, and again, kind of going back to what you were saying before about when I was talking about, obviously, it feels like the philosophy in terms of the way that the first team want to play is a directive for the whole club. One, how simple does that sound? And it makes you think that why wasn't this the case in the first place? But then again, it actually kind of makes you grateful for the fact that it wasn't like that under Conte and Mourinho. Like it kind of in a funny way, like we're quite glad that's the case. But yeah, there's so much to be excited about. Like the thought of what that Spurs team could look like in 5 or 6 years' time, like with the additions of someone like Yang, who is super exciting. I know that there are some people that kind of have their more cynical look on a transfer like that, which I don't really buy into. Personally, I don't think Spurs would have signed him unless they thought he was a really talented prospect. And it's come out now that another Big Six club who had recently just won the Champions League were also interested in him. Again, it's only down to 3 clubs. It's only Chelsea, Liverpool, City who have done that, because obviously Arsenal haven't. So, yeah, again, that just points towards the fact that we wouldn't have signed him if we didn't see potential there. So with him, with Mikey Moore, with Will Lancashire, with Jamie Donnelly, with people who have been established in the first team for a year or two now in Sarr, Van de Ven, Udogie, Porro as well, Kulusevski, all young players, Johnson, it bodes for a very, very exciting future. And I know fans also want these signings for the now, and we need to sprinkle that little bit of quality on top. But I'm really pleased with this. I'm really pleased with how we're going about it. We do need that quality for sure, and I do think that will come. And you don't want to keep asking Spurs fans to be patient, because I'm sure people are sick and tired of doing that, and also people are sick and tired of hearing it. And I get that, but I do. Where we're going as a club, I'm really excited about what we can be in the next 5 or 6 years.
I think the real difference is this kind of transfer window and the transfer window before. It was kind of a different outlook. We've gone for an approach that we've kind of gone off the statistics, so to speak, of how these players are going to be in terms of life.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me, but I think I can't hear you, Hollie. I don't know whether it's just me at first. Let me check.
Hello.
There we go. I think that's. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Right.
This last time, man, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you heard of what I was going on about.
I didn't hear much of it, I'll be honest. But fill me in, and I'm happy to bounce off of it.
It was kind of just saying how now we seem to be going down a route of getting players that are going to, so to speak, become good because of statistics or the way we've looked at these players, rather than let's just picking a player and hope they become good. But obviously, talking about different outgoings, etc., there's one transfer that's recently happened. Not supposed transfer, but more of a weird one for me. It's obviously Brian Hill, and the fact that he's gone out on loan. How did you kind of see that one going down? Because it's almost like we can't get the food we want, so we'll loan him out and try and get a bit of money. How do you kind of feel about that one?
Yeah, it was a weird one, because obviously what was reported the other day from, I think it was Fabrizio Romano, was that there was going to be some sort of buy option clause in the contract when he signed the loan that would essentially meant that Girona would have had first refusal on signing him with that release clause. And now apparently that's not the case. Apparently it seems that from what's come out, because obviously it's officially been announced today, the communication from Girona's side is that it seems like it's just a straight loan deal. So I'm not too worried about it. I mean, I'm glad that one way or another that he's out the squad, and that's, again, nothing to do with Brian Hill. Again, I think he's a good player. I just think that he's not suited to the way that we want to play. I don't think he's suited to the Premier League, to be honest. And I actually think he'll probably go there and do quite well. And it's a great opportunity for him with Champions League football for sure. But it's a bit disappointing that it feels like we're in the same situation every single transfer window with him. It's like we obviously don't want him anymore, but we also can't get the fee that we want for him. So hopefully next summer we do get the fee that we want for him, or hopefully maybe Girona look to say, okay, right, in January we want to buy him because he's started tearing it up, because they fear that another club might come in for him. Who knows? My biggest concern with Brian Hill is I hope that he does what Joe Rodon did and actually gives up his shirt number, because he's got a very valuable shirt number in that squad, number 11, that I think a lot of Spurs players would probably be looking at, and potentially for new signings as well. Bearing in mind we constantly link with high-profile wingers, so that was my biggest concern with Brian Hill. But I think what Spurs are doing well is, again, like I said, I know people are getting frustrated a little bit with the lack of incomings, or lack of kind of top quality incomings. Obviously, we signed Archie Gray and made Werner's loan, extended Werner's loan. The Werner one is an interesting one for me. I was having this conversation the other day on the Lab podcast with Flav from the Fighting Cock, and we were talking about the fact that the Werner loan actually maybe now, again, it might be a pie in the sky way of looking at it, or kind of a hopeful way of looking at it. Maybe now that actually makes more sense when you look at someone like Mikey Moore, because maybe they were just extending Werner's loan for another year because they know he is actually quite a reliable squad option. Again, I know people have got their thoughts on Timo Werner. Like I actually I don't mind him. I don't see. I think it's. I didn't mind the fact that we extended the loan. To be honest, he can be very frustrating. Of course, it's Timo Werner, but I think as an option in the squad, I don't think it's bad at all. But I actually think the fact that they did that and didn't make it permanent means that in a year's time, hopefully, they might see that position in the squad as Mikey Moore's. So I think that makes more sense. But I think what Spurs are doing well, which is quite like back to the point originally, like what is an underrated part of this in terms of, yes, there's frustrations about not bringing players in, is that we are clearing the decks. Like Højbjerg's gone, Emerson Royale is going, Brian Hill's gone, sort of gone. Reguilon, there was links today back to Sevilla. I don't know what it feels like. Sevilla have kind of got us over like a barrel. Like they must see us as like they must see us coming. I don't get it. It's like Sevilla every single time. But yeah, we are getting rid of the players that we don't want. Obviously, Hill and Reguilon didn't even go on the tour. So, and obviously Emerson did, but it feels like that one's moving along a little bit. I think the squad's going to look very different in come the end of the summer transfer window, but also it makes you excited about what that squad could look like when we're having this conversation next year in terms of some of the other players that they maybe think of, not outside they're welcome, but it's time for them to move on this time next year, and then the caliber of players that they're looking to bring in. But I think you're right. Like when you go back to the signing of someone like Min Hyuk Yang and obviously Bergvall and Dragusin in January as well, the fact that we are kind of attracting these young top talents, and I know Dragusin's a bit older, but we were able to kind of prize him away from Bayern Munich. We were able to prize Bergvall away from Barcelona. We were able to, by the sounds of it, potentially prize Min Hyuk Yang away from a top six club who've won the Champions League. So that could be City, Chelsea, or Liverpool. And again, obviously, with someone like Yang, there will be maybe obvious reasons why he thinks Spurs is the best place for him to develop. Of course, he'd probably want to play and learn with someone like Sonny. Of course, Spurs have got that huge Korean fan base, which will naturally kind of make him feel a little bit more comfortable. So I 100% get that. But I think what Spurs are building is this almost hub of some of the best young talent across the world, whether that's some of the talent that's coming through the academy or whether that's talent that we're bringing in and kind of nurturing at Hotspur way that we brought in from abroad. So I think we're in a really exciting place for sure going into the last few weeks of the window. And also, we were basically in the same position as we were last year. I think Maddison and Vicario and potentially Manuel Solomon were the only three signings that went on the pre-season tour last year. And then when we came back, we signed Van de Ven, we signed Johnson, we signed Veliz, and we signed Ashley Phillips as well. And again, those are two kind of young prospects for the future. But Johnson and Van de Ven were big first-team players. So I'm still confident that we will do two deals similar to that before the end of the window for sure, at least two.
No, I think so as well. And I think that's the thing. I think I'm just excited for once. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think all of us fans were crying out for the past years to get rid of the deadwood, this, that, and that, etc. For me, I think I'd, like I say, make a sacrifice, get those get those players off our books, and then maybe get some youngsters in, and then maybe in January or the next summer transfer window, get those bigger names in. But like I say, I think it's still doable to get some other players for now, so to speak. I mean, one of those players that's been flying around, it feels like it's something we can't really get rid of, if I want to say get rid of, at the moment, is Chiesa, because again, that's been flying around in the wind. So what's your kind of take of maybe Chiesa coming to the squad?
It's a hard one because I love Chiesa as a player, and again, he's someone that's been really unlucky with injuries. Obviously did his ACL 2 or 3 years ago now, and hasn't quite looked the same player since then. But also with Chiesa, he's part of that. The fact that under Allegri, Juventus have played quite negative football, is that going to get the best out of him? It makes you think someone as versatile as Chiesa, who can basically play anywhere across the front line, how could that look like for Ange Postecoglou? If he is not the main attacking signing, I think that's something that Spurs could potentially look at for £25 million, which is the rumoured fee. I'm a bit worried that Juventus see him as surplus to requirements when essentially he was the poster boy for that new era of Juventus. Like he was seen as the guy for them, and obviously he's been unlucky with injuries. Personally, in terms of the links, I just think it's a lot of agent talk. Like because a lot of it last week was coming from Italian media, which at the best of times can be incredibly off the mark because there is so many different like media outlets reporting different things. You feel like in Serie A, everything's a little bit chaotic anyway, and it feels like so many agents are just trying to. It's like when Paratici was dealing with us for when Paratici was in charge of transfers, it was just a mess. And I think that's kind of like where, I mean, sometimes don't get me wrong, like you got as a fan, it's like you kind of got this mini dopamine little nugget every day because it was like, oh, we're linked with this player, and it's like, and fans are getting frustrated now because that's not the case anymore. But this is a much better way to operate I know people are getting frustrated with the Johan Lang working in silence or whatever, but if we end up with the targets that we wanted at the start of the window, which have been the noises that someone like Alistair Gold is making, saying that, or Paul O'Keefe was saying this as well, like the targets haven't really changed. Like the plan, or actually those were words that came from Postecoglou's mouth in the press conference. He said the plan was the plan, essentially, and the plan still is the plan. So those players that we were linked with at the start of the window are still players that we're pursuing. Chiesa, the kind of romantic in me wants it to happen, but also I'm not that bothered if it doesn't, because if Chiesa ends up signing by the end of the window, I don't think he'll be the only player, but I also think that it might represent the fact that we haven't got our main targets over the line. I think it actually, in a funny way, which sounds mad to say about a player of his quality, could actually be quite disappointing.
No, I'm with you. I get you. I mean, if that's the case and say he doesn't come in, who is the player that you would say would be that player to play in that kind of frontline role?
The player I've been desperate for is Eze, the whole summer window. And again, I know Spurs fans are like, that's the one they want. It kind of feels like university. Although, like, I think some people kind of have doubts about, is he that touchline winger that we want? Is he the right profile? I think if there's a player of the quality of a Barry Eze, you make it work. I think you just do. Like, I think he's that good where it's like you could play him. I did a video on him on my channel like a few weeks ago, talking about the various different ways in which Spurs could play him. Obviously, he can be rotated with Maddison, can play in that number 10 position. You could play him and Maddison together. I think Eze off the left is exciting as well, because I know Udogie likes to come inside a lot of the time. Udogie is also very good going on the overlap. As we've seen a lot with Jamie Donnelly in pre-season, a lot of the runs that he's been making for those kind of crosses have been going round the winger and getting to the byline and playing as more of a traditional kind of fullback in a way, even though some of the positions, I sort of did some analysis on it the other day, like with Donnelly, some of the positions that he's picking himself up in is crazy, like for a left back, but it's what we saw with Udogie last season. But I don't think Eze would be a problem off the left at all. He could probably play on the right. I think he's good deeper. I think they obviously, again, there were noises at the start of the window that Eze was one of the main targets, the priority targets. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet for various reasons. Obviously, he's been at the Euros. It's a lot of money, not just in terms of the overall transfer fee, but it sounds like Palace want a lot of it up front, especially off the back of losing Elise, especially with the fact that they potentially might lose Mark Gahey, which I don't think they will, but they could do, so they want to protect themselves. The release clause is there, so if Spurs meet it, he can come. That's not a problem, but I think they want a lot of it paid up front, which is complicated. I think this is one that drags on. I think it's one that stays quiet for maybe another week or two, and then I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen. I think that Eze is someone that Spurs have looked at for such a long time, and if they had doubts about him being able to play an Ange Postecoglou system as a winger, spending £68 million on him as a winger, I don't think there would be noises of him coming out as the main target. Like I said, I think if there's a player of his quality out there and you want him, you buy him, and then you figure it out. Like, it's one of those. And that's not to say that Spurs wouldn't have planned of how they're going to use him, but he's that good. You just do it and see what happens. I think I do think that. I saw someone in the chat saying about Neto, and it's like, I love Pedro Neto, and if you could describe what a perfect fit would be for Postecoglou and Ange Ball in terms of that winger, he probably ticks every single box, other than the fact that his hamstrings are just not. That's the only downside, really, isn't it? I think he's missed basically half the season for all of the last few seasons. He'd be an amazing signing in terms of the potential and what he could bring to the side. He's pretty much perfect, but I do massively worry about that. If any manager could kill him even more, he's probably Postecoglou, isn't it? Like, it probably is.
No, you're right. And the thing is as well, obviously, with our medical team at Tottenham, as we've seen through the years, it's probably not the best thing to get another player with short hamstrings that are going to snap now and again. But you're right. I think, like you said, Pedro Neto would be the one, but I'm all for Eze. I think a lot of us, like you said, just want Eze to come, especially seeing him at the Euros when he kind of came off and did his thing. It's like, wow, I could see him at Tottenham.
It feels like a Tottenham player as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like, I know it's someone we've been linked with for a long time. And again, it's upsetting in a way, the fact that we could have bought him for 10, 15 million 4 years ago before he went to Palace. The same with Maddison, the same with Grealish, obviously, as well. Obviously, well, we're not linked with Grealish now, but we could have bought Grealish then. So it is, it's quite Spurs to be like, okay, we're not going to sign you now, but we're going to sign you for 60 odd million pounds a few years later. But sometimes that's just, sometimes everything happens for a reason. But he just feels Tottenham. He just does. He feels like the sort of player that would really kind of get people off their seats. And even if he's not the perfect fit, I'm not really that bothered.
No. We'll make it work. And
Yeah.
we'll definitely make it work if he 100% wants him. And I think all of us Spurs fans want him as well. Like you said, he just oozes Spurs. And I think that's probably the biggest thing as well, just to play that kind of attacking style. And just not being afraid to take anyone on. I think that's the biggest thing that I enjoy with watching Eze. But we're going to finish it off, Ben. I'm going to probably ask you one more question. And that kind of be in terms of, it's probably a big one, but where you kind of see like next season going down, where do you expect Spurs to be? Are we going to have any trophies next season? What do you think your outcome is going to be?
I'm really excited about next year. I think we'll finish in the top 4. I think that we could push for 3rd as well, especially with I did a Premier League predictions video earlier on with someone for another channel, and I kind of did my league 20-1, and I was like, what I was saying in that was like, I think it will be very tight between 3rd and maybe 6th or 7th. Because I think you've got a lot of teams in transition, mainly Liverpool, obviously, coming in with a new manager. I think Liverpool will be fine. I think Slot will figure things out. I don't think it's too much of an adaptation from what Klopp was. Obviously, Klopp leaves a massive hole, for sure, with them. But I had Liverpool 3rd, but I think Spurs can definitely push for that. Definitely push for that. I think Villa, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against Aston Villa. I like Aston Villa. I like what they're doing. I like Emery. I like some of the signings. I think their fans are going a little bit overboard on what they've done because of the sheer amount of players that they have signed. And yeah, they need that depth for Europe. I totally get it, especially for the Champions League. They're going to find that they're not going to be able to rotate as much next year, especially if they get a tough group in the Champions League. Obviously, we saw Newcastle last season kind of fall off with those injuries. Again, it's not like they finished in the bottom half or anything, and we know Newcastle are a good side. And I don't think that will happen to Villa. But I think Spurs have got much more of an opportunity to rotate, and because like I was saying at the start of the stream, like the quality of these young players, I think we will trust them to play significant minutes in those competitions, not just because it gives the first team players a rest, but because we think that they can help us go far. So I think that will massively help. I think that, you know, again, like every season, if we're able to keep injuries to a minimum, and again, that is obviously hard with the amount of games that we're going to have to play. If we go deep in the Europa League, obviously there's 2 extra games in the group stage this year because of the new format. So it's going to be a lot, but I'm really excited, especially if we can get a couple more of those kind of key targets across the line. I think there's so much to be excited about. I cannot wait for the season to get started. I've been so impressed with what I've seen in pre-season. Again, there's little things to iron out, but that's what pre-season's for. And I think come that first game of the season against Leicester, whether we've made that big sign or not yet, I think everyone will sort of be back in that feeling of like, okay, we've remembered what we are a bit under Ange and that we can beat anyone and we can be really exciting. Obviously, we got off to a flyer last year, and there was an amazing, I presume you've probably seen it, there was a little documentary that Spurs put out, and there was a clip from Ange in the QPR game saying about like we wear the Tottenham shirts, we play the Tottenham way. And stuff like that just makes you so kind of excited to get back. And also, I don't know, like he was saying in that sort of longer version of that, he was sort of saying that like we had such a great start last year because we were really able to get into the players what we wanted from them in pre-season, early doors, and that involves the younger players, etc. And I think if you're going to see that even more with these young players this year, I think that bodes quite well for how we could potentially start the season. Obviously, we've got a tough start. We've got Leicester, then Everton, hopefully 2 winnable games, Newcastle, and then it's Arsenal. So it's going to be a tough start, but you know, why shouldn't we go into that North London derby in early September thinking that we can beat them at home? You know, we played well enough against them in both games last year. So I'm really excited. I think 3rd or 4th place, I do genuinely believe that. And I think we could have a good go at one of the cups. Whether we win them or not remains to be seen. Could we get knocked out in the first round of the League Cup like we did last season? Probably, potentially. But I'm really excited to see where we can finish.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very exciting season, just because of the feel-good factor in terms of seeing the youth coming in, seeing them performing really well, and then obviously seeing the players that we have got through the door in terms of Archie Gray really excelling as well. It's going to be a very, very fun season. But Ben, it's been amazing to chat with you tonight. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks, Hollie. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy doing these. You can find me on YouTube, just Ben Bowman. Started my channel about a month or so ago. So go and subscribe over there. Go on, follow me on TikTok as well. Just my name, Ben Bowman, or Ben Talks Football is my handle. You'll be able to find me. And on Twitter as well, you'll be able to hear me chatting, just yapping away about Spurs during the day. So go and give me a follow over there and we can have a chat.
Lovely stuff. No, like I say, it's been good fun tonight, Ben. And like I say, it's been good to pick your brains to go over everything that's happened. Probably like the last month, because I've been so out of touch with Spurs recently. So thank you. And like I say, thanks to everybody reflecting, rewatching, all the good stuff. I am doing a fantasy football this time, where me and Wes on a Wednesday will go through and see who's where in the leaderboard. So we actually stay on top of it this season. So make sure you go and find out, join that. But like I say, I don't know if there's going to be a show on Monday, but we'll probably have one next Wednesday, and then we'll do the preview of the season the week after. So until next time, come on, you Spurs.